Prospective memory error. You know that moment where you say, I don't need to write this down, I'll totally remember it. Yeah, that's a lie. Your brain just conned you. This is called a prospective memory error, the mistake of assuming you'll remember to do something in the future and then not. It's the same mental scam that convinces you, I'll remember to take the laundry out of the washer later, except later turns into tomorrow, and now everything smells like a wet dog. The brain is built to store memories of things that already happened, not to remind you about things you haven't done yet. Prospective memory depends on something called cue detection. You only remember when the right trigger shows up in your environment. If the cue never arrives, the task never makes it back into your conscious mind. That's why future you always gets screwed by present you. Present you is cocky. Present you thinks he's a genius with an exceptional memory. Meanwhile, future you is standing in the kitchen at 7 p.m., realizing you forgot to take the chicken out of the freezer this morning. The hilarious part is how confident we are when we make the assumption. We honestly feel like we'll remember. That is, until you forget your anniversary and your spouse reminds you with the icy silence of 1,000 winters. False consensus effect. One of the most embarrassing mental shortcuts you can take is the false consensus effect, the mistaken assumption that everyone thinks the way you do. Seems reasonable, until reality makes it painfully clear that they don't. Like when someone blurts out a political opinion at a baseball game, convinced the whole section of the stadium is on their side, and then shoves their foot so far into their mouth they're practically flossing with their shoelaces. The false consensus effect is the psychological pitfall where you take your personal perspective and accidentally project it onto the entire room. Psychologists explain this as a mix of social projection and motivated reasoning. We assume others share our views partly because it makes our worldview feel validated. Then, the people and ideas most available to you, your friends, social feeds, co-workers, reinforce this assumption. So your perspective feels like the standard, even if it's not. So you think, well, I believe this, and the people around me believe this, so most people probably do too. Except the problem is, your sample size is just you, and a handful of people who already agree with you. The stronger you feel about something, the more certain you become that everyone else agrees, which means the false consensus effect doesn't just make you wrong, it makes you confidently wrong. The spotlight effect. You walk into a room with a coffee stain on your shirt and immediately think, oh no, everyone's staring at me. Guess what? They're probably not. This is the spotlight effect. The mistaken belief that other people are paying way more attention to you than they actually are. Psychologists chalk it up to egocentric bias. Since you see life through your own lens, your brain tricks you into thinking your actions are front and center for everyone else. But honestly, most people are way too wrapped up in their own problems, their bills, their deadlines, or maybe even their own coffee stains to notice yours. The disconnect comes because you replay your mistakes in your head, making them feel huge. Meanwhile, others barely register them. They might notice for a second, then move on. That mismatch is why your brain swears you're in the spotlight, even when you're not. The funny part is that everyone else is caught in their own spotlight effect, sweating over their own slip-ups. So while you're worried they're judging your coffee stain, they're stressing about their own bad hair day or that awkward email they sent. Truth is, nobody's paying as much attention as you think. We're all just trying to get through the day. The Barnum effect. You've probably read a horoscope or taken a personality test and thought, wow, that's so me. That's the Barnum effect at play. The tendency to believe vague, general statements are all about you, when in reality they could fit just about anyone. It's named after P.T. Barnum, the showman who boasted he had something for everyone. Like a one-size-fits-all t-shirt, these statements are broad enough to cover most people, but your brain makes them feel like a custom fit. It works because we naturally look for meaning that relates to us, even in generic information. Take a statement like, you sometimes doubt whether you've made the right decision, which can seem deeply personal to almost anyone. We all have doubts, which is why it feels so spot on. The Barnum effect shows how easily we can be convinced that something vague is uniquely about us, just because we want it to be. So the next time a horoscope or personality quiz feels spot on, ask your neighbor or even their dog if it describes them too. Confirmation bias. The confirmation bias is like your brain's overly enthusiastic yes man, always nodding along to whatever you already believe. It's the tendency to spot, remember, and cling to things that back up your opinions, while giving a hard pass to anything that disagrees. Say you're convinced your new car brand is the greatest thing on four wheels. Suddenly, every article, review, and random chat at the gas station seems to confirm your genius choice. Negative reviews? You write those off as just haters or fake news. This happens because we're bombarded with so much information, so the brain takes shortcuts by reinforcing what you already believe instead of sifting through endless material. The downside? Your perspective gets lopsided. You're not seeing the world as it is, but as you expect it to be. That's why your uncle still swears his football team is Super Bowl bound, despite its epic losing streak. The confirmation bias explains why conspiracy theories stick, why arguments on the internet never change anyone's mind, and why people can watch the same event and come away with completely different takes. Once your brain settles on a belief, it's wired to keep proving itself right. Cry wolf effect. You're dead asleep in a hotel at 3 a.m. when the smoke detector starts shrieking. Do you leap out of bed, heart racing? Nope. You groan, pull the pillow over your head, and mutter, "Ugh, probably some prankster yanking the alarm again." The one time it's a real fire, half the guests are still snoozing, trained by too many false alarms to just not care. Psychologists often explain this in terms of habituation or alarm fatigue, the same mechanism that makes you stop noticing the smell of your own cologne after 10 minutes, or traffic humming outside your window after a week. When alarms go off too often for no good reason, your brain gets desensitized. The trouble is that when the real threat shows up, you're more likely to ignore it. That's the cry wolf effect. Warnings that fire too often stop feeling like warnings at all. The more you hear them, the less you trust them. In the end, it's not the fake alarms that get you. It's the real one you sleep through. Change blindness. You're cruising through town and a shiny new restaurant catches your eye. You point it out, all excited, only for your partner to say, "Babe, that's been there for months." Welcome to change blindness, the brain's sneaky way of missing obvious changes right in front of you. It happens because attention is a limited resource. Your brain doesn't snap a perfect photo of the world. It sketches a rough outline and fills in the gaps with assumptions. As long as the overall scene feels consistent, you don't register the restaurant that popped up, your friend's new haircut, or the fact that your coworker shaved off the mustache he had for 10 years. Although it usually works out okay, it leaves blind spots where the obvious hides in plain sight. It's why movie bloopers sneak past you, why eyewitnesses miss key details, and why, when your partner asks, "Notice anything different?" you're already sweating, knowing you're about to guess wrong. Focusing illusion. Ever caught yourself thinking, if I could just lose 20 pounds or get that fancy car, then everything in life would fall into place? That's the focusing illusion messing with you. It's the bias where we overestimate how much one specific change will magically fix our overall happiness. Why do we fall for it? Because when we picture the future, our brains instinctively grab onto the one thing we think we can control. Dropping weight, scoring a better job, or buying that dream car seems like a shiny lever we can pull to fix everything. It's a lot easier to focus on that than to deal with the tangled mess of life. Work deadlines, family chaos, or that surprise bill that shows up out of nowhere. Our mind hypes up that one controllable variable, blowing its importance way out of proportion, while quietly shoving life's other hassles into the background. That mental shortcut creates a distorted forecast, where the single change feels like a game changer. But when you actually get there, the background noise comes flooding back, and the magic fades fast. Actor-observer bias. Ever notice how when someone else cuts you off in traffic, you instantly assume they're just a terrible driver? But if you cut someone off, it's totally justified. Maybe you were late for a meeting, or just missed them in your blind spot. That's the actor-observer bias in a nutshell. When you're the actor judging your own actions, you blame external circumstances. But when you're the observer watching someone else, you assume it's an internal trait or personality flaw. It happens because when it's about you, you know the whole story. But with others, you don't have that context, so you assume it's just who they are. It's the same deal when you miss a deadline. You know it's because life threw you a dozen curveballs, but if your coworker blows one, you're side-eyeing them, thinking they've just been binge-watching Netflix. Basically, we're the heroes of our own story, but everyone else, they're the bumbling side characters who just can't get it together. Planning fallacy. You tell yourself, this'll only take an hour, and then 3 days later, you're knee-deep in half-built IKEA furniture, staring at an empty pizza box, wondering where it all went wrong. That's the planning fallacy, our knack for wildly underestimating how much time, effort, or cash a task will actually take. Why do we do this? When we plan, we're daydreaming about the best-case scenario. No interruptions, no mistakes, no doom scrolling on our phones. In essence, your brain drafts a schedule for a superhuman version of you, the one who's efficient, disciplined, and immune to distractions. Then, reality crashes in with traffic jams, missing screws, or a coworker who just needs 5 minutes, and your perfect plan suddenly collapses. The planning fallacy explains why projects drag on, budgets explode, and you still believe you can get ready in just 5 minutes. We don't just underestimate time. We build plans on wishful assumptions, which is why that quick email before bed leaves you blinking at the clock, wondering how it's already 2 a.m. Illusion of control. You hit the elevator button 3 times, hoping it will speed things up. You blow on your dice before rolling and wear your lucky socks on game day because clearly the team depends on you. That's the illusion of control, the belief that you can influence outcomes that you have no effect on. Psychologists trace it to the brain's preference for order over chaos. Linking your actions to results feels comforting, like you've got a grip on things. Pressing the button, repeating the ritual, or yelling at your TV gives you a sense of power. And once in a while, pure coincidence rewards the superstition, which only cements the illusion further. It's mostly harmless when it comes to dice or socks, but this mindset can sneak into bigger stakes, like investors swearing they can time the market, or folks buying lottery tickets with their foolproof system. We're so desperate for control, we'll invent it. But let's face it, no matter how many times you pound that elevator button, it's still arriving on its own schedule. The Dunning-Kruger effect. There's always that person who's watched one YouTube tutorial and now thinks they're a master at crypto, wine tasting, or fixing a leaky faucet. They strut in, brimming with confidence, ready to school everyone. Meanwhile, actual experts, people who've spent years on the subject, tend to pause, second guess, and admit there's still plenty they don't know. The Dunning-Kruger effect happens because ignorance and expertise are mirror opposites. When you're a beginner, you don't know enough to spot your own mistakes, so you think you're nailing it. But as you gain real skill, you start seeing the complexities, the exceptions, and the gaps in your knowledge, which makes you less certain, not more. Confidence and competence don't always go hand in hand. The newbie might be the loudest, most certain voice in the room, while the expert is quietly wrestling with doubt. So next time someone's preaching with total conviction, take it with a grain of salt. They might just be one YouTube video deep and convinced they're a pro. Naive realism. Every argument is the same. You're calm, logical, and laying out the facts as they obviously are. The other person? Totally biased, blinded by their feelings, or brainwashed by bad information. Welcome to naive realism, the rock-solid belief that you see the world objectively, and anyone who disagrees must be the ones who are wrong. It happens because perception isn't a perfect lens. Everything you see gets filtered through your upbringing, culture, values, and expectations. But because that filter is invisible, it feels like you're looking through clear glass. Your version of reality feels like the reality, no question. The problem is obvious. If both sides think they're being perfectly rational, then every disagreement becomes proof that the other side is ignorant or crazy. That's why political debates go nowhere, family feuds last decades, and why you're secretly convinced you're the only person on the road who knows how to drive. We all believe we see the world as it is, which means everyone else has to be delusional. Caught yourself nodding along to these biases? That's proof you're human. Hit that subscribe button before your brain tricks you into thinking you'll remember to do it later.